Hello, everyone. Welcome to Escaping the Chains podcast. I am your host, John Humphreys. We have a friend of ours on the show today. His name is Brian Blevins. Before we get into that, though, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow us on the Apple Podcast app or Spotify. We appreciate it, and give us a 5-star review if you don't mind. We also are in the studio today. Our production team is Delivered Media. Hit them up for any of your needs, anything like this. They also do stuff with churches, helping get their stuff set up so they can have clean recordings and sound. So today we have with us my friend Brian Blevins. He runs Chubby Burger, which is a food truck. They've been basically they're sponsors of the show. And then the pressure washing, what's the name of that again?
B&B Soft Wash LLC.
B&B Soft Wash LLC. So if you get a chance, go like those on Facebook. Check them out. Chubby Burger's really good. Obviously, that's just around the central Indiana area right now. But we'll see what happens. But I've had it a lot this summer, actually. Yeah, we've had a lot of overdose awareness events and things like that he does. So Brian Blevins is also a recovery coach, and we have worked together for how many years have we worked together?
7.
7 years doing recovery coaching.
7.
I remember once we got certified, they gave us permission to go in the hospital, and we were walking across the walk thing, and I looked up at you and I was like, dude, I feel like this is Law and Order Special Victim Units but for like recovery or addiction or something. In that time, there's obviously it's a tough job because some people pass away. You deal with a lot of people right there in crisis, right where they're at. Brian has been really like we all found our own little space in this job and kind of worked really well together. Brian's done a lot of transport. How many transports have you done to like treatment?
Bro, it's a ridiculous number. I would say at least 350 plus.
Yeah.
That's more people than I graduated high school with.
Yeah, well, I remember we had the Friday night service one night, and we had people raise their hands if you had taken them to treatment, and there was probably 85. It felt like it was a ton.
Some of them 3-4 times.
Yeah, so that's not counting how many times.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. It takes a lot of people. That's the thing about this recovery thing is like sometimes you can get frustrated, but it takes some people, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times to really get it, and then they get it, and it's an awesome thing. I think that's why the job can be so challenging. It's because you see the hope, and then the reality of what you're dealing with sometimes is a lot different.
Yeah, we see the good in people.
Yeah, we have to, or you can't really do the job effectively anymore. And when you stop that, you got to take a vacation or something.
A break.
You got to take a break. So and that was we've been to conferences.
Washington, D.C.
Been to D.C. twice. For conferences, drug court national conference. Is that what it was? Yeah.
At the Gaylord.
The Gaylord. That hotel was
ridiculous.
Insane.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane.
There's a waterfall inside the hotel.
Yeah, and they have like the glass elevator and the glass elevators.
Trees.
The first time we went to D.C., we weren't staying at the Gaylord. That's where the conference was. We were staying at. I don't want to name it because I don't know if I can get in trouble or not. We were staying at a national hotel chain that is usually pretty nice. So we're like, oh, that'll be cool. And it was a mess. It was
Super 8.
Ran down. Yeah, it had nothing on that, actually. It was bad.
It was bad.
Yeah, and we had to take cabs. We had to take cabs over to Gaylord. And every time we get in a cab, Brian, this is his personality. Like he talks to the cab drivers like he knows them. And by the time you get there, he's telling them they need to start a business and like speaking life into them.
What are you doing for yourself?
Yeah. And that first year, we snuck away too over to. We were supposed to be at the conference, and we went to D.C. to check stuff out.
The White House.
The White House. And Brian, I was like, okay, we got to be discreet. And 10 minutes later, we were getting text messages because this dude posted a picture in front of the Washington Monument.
Yeah. Then we go back and we're sitting by the judge, and the judge says, "Hey, where were you guys at?" And of course, I say, "The White House."
Yeah. So we didn't get in trouble for it. We were getting text messages from Marion, from back in Grant County. Oh, fun stuff. So, Brian, how did we meet?
Well, John, it's pretty awesome how we met. I actually got sober in 2015, met the Lord, got radically saved, started going to meetings in AA, and there was this meeting called A Better Life, Brianna's Hope, that had just started up. Randy Davis started this meeting.
He has a podcast
Yeah.
now too, Faith in Your Recovery. Really
Yeah.
good podcast.
Yep. It was in Red Key. Is that,
Red Key or
no, not.
yeah, it was one of those two.
Yeah. Well, I met you in Dunkirk.
Dunkirk.
But I started going to the Red Key meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and they hadn't started opening chapters. This was before they started moving to different counties.
I believe they have like 40 some chapters now. The
They're
last
doing,
I checked,
yeah, they're doing amazing.
they're everywhere. Yeah.
Doing awesome stuff. Well, they had a Dunkirk meeting, and it was kind of close to Hartford City, and I was on house arrest at the time, and they allowed me to go to meetings. So I went to as many meetings as I could in surrounding counties, because in Hartford City at the time, the recovery community, they really just didn't have much of one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we progress, they started to come, but I went to a Dunkirk meeting, and we were in a small basement, and there was like maybe 5 or 7 of us. I went with Mitch Kanzler. He kind of was my ride. Didn't have a license at the time, so kind of followed him around. And they shared that there was going to be a special speaker coming. And I was like, well, this ought to be good. And then they said, it was John Humphreys, and I've never heard of John Humphreys in my life, so that's the first time I've ever even heard your name. And they said you were with Nathan Mazellan, and I've never heard of Nathan Mazellan, so your two faces were two people that I've never met, ran across, never even heard of my whole life, growing up in Hartford City. So, I kind of was like, cool, get to hear a good testimony. People weren't doing testimonies back then.
Yeah.
So for someone to show up and just share was different, because that wasn't going on. And it was time for the meeting, and we get a phone call that you had called and went the wrong way. And I remember that, and you showed up like 15 minutes late or whatever, which was, on point.
Yeah.
And Nathan Mazellan brought his guitar, and I remember, him opening up in worship, and you know what I mean. That dude is anointed, and him just entering us in to the presence of the Lord, and then you had got to share your testimony. And as I sat there and I was listening to your testimony, I finally heard somebody something radical happened, just like what radical happened to me. So when you shared the story of actually meeting Jesus and laying down a methadone bottle and was openly, sharing that in the meeting, it really, I'm sitting there, and, I was going to commit suicide, and I had an encounter with the Lord while I was in jail, and supernatural happened to me as well. So you are the first person that I actually personally got to sit there and witness the testimony of that this happened to me. So when I heard that happen to you, I was like, wow. That was just amazing. And I think that you ended up starting to share at some other places.
Yeah, well, you guys went back to Hartford City. I think that's part of what we want to do here is like, there's so much power when you share your testimony. And some people will be like, well, my story's not this or that. My story's not, I don't have a bunch of prison time. You know what I mean? It's just going and telling people what Jesus did for you. And it can be a little awkward at first or funny because if like a miracle happened in your life, you're like, well, I don't want people to think I'm weird or,
Yeah.
judge me. And I just kind of, I guess I didn't think about that stuff necessarily, but I took off and it just, one thing would lead to another. And then Hartford City had like 2 or 3 groups open up that were sent. One of them was a Better Life Beyond His Hope and then the Celebrate Recovery. And I feel like they had another, well, then you started yours, but prior to that, I ended up in Hartford City and I was, speaking over there quite a bit, but that's the thing is everybody has everybody has a story, and I think it's really important for people to share their stories, and it's kind of a passion of mine is to like I want to hear people, what has God done for you? You know what I mean? And like for me, I just had to tell people, especially when I first it was awkward at first, but after I started telling those, I just had to tell people, what Jesus did for me. Whether I
Wow.
was at the factory, the gas station, whatever.
How do you get radically healed like that and it be so real and then not tell no one?
I know. Well, when it first happened, it was like I didn't want to tell anybody because it was like everybody's going to think I'm nuts. And I mean, not saying that they don't think I'm nuts anyway,
Right.
but yeah, that was the thing there.
Well, so I was in jail. I was in the drunk tank, and I had hives and rashes all over my body, and they went away.
hmm So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your story. So you were in jail,
Yeah,
looking at a lot of time,
life basically.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
What landed you in jail? Like, what was the life leading up to that?
So in high school, started off marijuana, Robitussin, over the counter cough medicine. On the weekends, alcohol, and that kind of ruined my senior year of high school. So addiction started to set in really, to where it affected me. I went and took my SAT exam high on Robitussin. And I was so high on Robitussin that the paper was moving around on me, and I couldn't see A through E or whatever they did, and my grade point average compared to my SAT, like the counselor pulled me in. He's like, I don't know what the freak is going on with you, bro, but like you need to take this test again. And I'm like, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at all. Graduating high school, I graduated most varsity letters in my class, so I was really active. I was class president for a couple years in high school, so like I was a popular person, an athlete, basically, and I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left high school, and then I just started, partying and hanging around with different crowds other than the people that I hung out with playing sports, and that was on my teams. I started gravitating, to a different crowd. And when it was time to go to college, I just was like, I'll go to Vincennes University because I'll go and, do my English and math and general studies at Vincennes. And then, all my friends were going to Ball State, IU, Purdue, all those other schools. And I'll just, I couldn't even get into those schools because of my SAT score was so bad, and a junior college would accept, about anyone. So I was going through that route, and I ran into cocaine when I went to Vincennes, and there in Hartford City. This was in 1992. There wasn't drugs like that in our town. So, coming home every weekend and then, hitting the bar scenes and, that lifestyle, everything just got out of control. I'd end up dropping out of high school.
College?
Out
of Vincennes?
out of Vincennes. I dropped out of college and, just started from job to job. I've worked at about every factory around Hartford City there is. I was a semi driver for 5 years. So I was highly functioning. And and I was always someone that thought that I was in control because I had stuff. Like, if you had money, if you had cars, if you had a house, all that other stuff, you know, you didn't have a problem like someone, you know, sticking a needle in their arm or robbing people or whatever. So I think I got my first felony when I was 21, selling cocaine. So basically, all my freedom was taken away. It was in Delaware County where I got arrested for a C felony, and I should have went to prison then. I had money, bought a lawyer, you know, probation. So, you know, it was just basically poor choices, risky behavior,
Yeah.
doing the next wrong thing because I stopped caring, you know, what was right and what was wrong. And, you know, 20s became the 30s, more felonies, more charges. Then, you know, 40 years old, you know, I graduate from all the drugs that there is. I was in a car accident, and placed on pain medication. And they took my pain medication because I had marijuana in my system. So I was on all this pain medication they had me on. I ended up being on disability. They diagnosed me with a back disease, anxiety disorder, and major depression, you know, through past this wreck and everything. So, you know, I'm on disability. I'm on every medication there is. I'm on pain medicine. They take that away, and you know, they came out with those pills, the Opana. When the Opana epidemic, you know, came around, I was right in the middle of that, and then it just, you know, went to meth, and then finally I did heroin for the first time, and heroin was like the love of my life, drug-wise.
Yeah.
Like I did basically everything that there is to do, and when I did that, it just, I mean, I could have been married to that drug, and did it every day for probably a year and a half, and it was all bad. And on Thanksgiving, which was November 24th, 2015. It was my dad's birthday, and I'm supposed to be going to my grandma's house, and I'm running out of that drug, and Indianapolis is where I went to, you know, re-up, and probably had other people's money involved or whatever that is. So, you know, everybody has something to do on Thanksgiving, so I'm trying to get back so I could make it to my family. And when I came back to Hartford City, I was met by the entire police force, I think. And then, you know, from there it was, there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
There's no hope. This is it. And I got out of the car when they pulled me over, and I had a bottle that had my drugs in it, John, and there was a dog in my car, and I hurried up and I jumped out of my car, and I threw this bottle, and this bottle, I mean, I probably threw it 50 yards, and no one seen me throw this bottle. So before the cops got there, I actually got rid of the drugs I had on me. They hit in the top of a tree, and they landed right back in the yard about 15 or 20 yards right in front of me, just like somebody was in the top of that tree and just threw them right back. And I just watched it fall in the middle of the yard, and in my sick mind, I was like, they didn't see me throw it. Those aren't my drugs.
Yeah.
So.
But they found them.
They found them. Yeah, they found them, and two other people had already, you know, wore a wire on me, and so they had me.
So they had you hemmed up on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they had me hemmed up, and I would say, you know, that was the worst day of my life or whatever, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, bro.
Yeah.
I go to jail, and the withdrawal that I'm going through is like so severe. like vomiting and diarrhea, like for days, and I can't take it. I can't call my mom and dad. I'm so ashamed, full of guilt, just, and I'm like, I'm just gonna end it, bro. Like,
So you haven't called anybody in your family or
no,
talked to anybody?
I couldn't.
Yeah.
Couldn't pick up a phone. I'm checking out.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like contemplating, like, how am I going to do this? Like,
End your life.
yeah, in my
Yeah.
life, like, so I just didn't know like how I was going to do this thing, and it came to me, if I don't eat, and I basically I don't want to talk to no one. And probably what came out of my mouth probably wasn't good, and so they kind of helped me down the hallway because I was real weak, and I didn't know where they were taking me, or who they were taking me to see, or if it was an attorney or whatever. But they took me to a room, and there was a gentleman. His name was Henry Long, and Henry Long went to the Lighthouse Church. And back in 2013, Henry Long helped me in an altar call another time in my life. That I wanted it, but I didn't want it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know how to want it or how to go after it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the same guy, and he looked at me, bro, and he said, Brian, he said, if you die right now, he said, where would you go? And I didn't tell anyone I was going to kill myself. So it was like, how could that be his question right now to me? And it just, it really broke me in that moment. And, he just shared with me the love of Jesus. And I was crying, I was snotting, and all of a sudden I had more energy than when I went in after I cried all of those tears. And I made it back to my jail cell, and I asked them if I could take a shower. And, they immediately was like, yeah, because of all the vomit and all the diarrhea and all that other stuff. I haven't even bathed, and I refused. So when I took a shower, I gave my life to the Lord in that shower, and I had hives and rashes and all this stuff all over my body. I'll never forget that I pushed that button, and a bead of water's coming down on my head, and I put my hands on the wall, and I said, God, I said, if you're real, because I didn't want my life. In the first place, if you're real, I said, I'll go anywhere, I'll do anything, and I'll give you the praise, honor, and the glory. And that was the beginning of where I'm at right now. That was the starting point of, I don't want my life if you're real. And he took I got goosebumps, John.
Yeah.
He took my stuff. He took my back disease. He took my anxiety disorder. He took my depression. He took my hives. I still had to deal with my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things he didn't take, but as far as physical, he took everything physical right then in that moment.
So after this though, you still have charges.
Oh yeah,
So you still got all that going
yeah,
on.
big boy charges.
Did you get a hold of your family yet?
No, so after that happened, I got a hold of my family, and I'm like, hey, look, basically the Lord just touched me in a shower and like healed me, and I'm sure they probably thought, yeah, whatever, trying to get out of jail again, want us to help bail you out. And
Yeah.
and that was a lot, because that was a repeated thing all the time of me crying out that I'm going to get better and I go to rehab, and same old thing. So my parents, this time they were done helping me out. There was no more. Me being on disability, I had money on a card, so I ended up going to court, and they lowered my bond amount, and actually bailed me out of jail with my own money. allowed me to stay at their house because the cops come and raided my home and seized all my belongings and all my stuff. So I was basically starting over at my mom and dad's, and I was grateful. And I had 6 months before I was going to go in front of the judge, and what the amount of things that I was able to accomplish, in that 6 months time frame, was a real miracle.
Yeah.
I went to treatment. It was Grant Blackford Mental Health, Hester Hollis there in Hartford City. So I completed treatment. I was doing 2 or 3 meetings a day. Never missed a meeting. Started going to Celebrate Recovery there in Hartford City. Became a leader at Celebrate Recovery. I started sharing my testimony in the first 4 months of my recovery journey. So when it was time for me to go to court, in a 6 months period of time, when I went to court, there was 52 people that went to court on my behalf on a Monday morning.
That's wild.
Yeah, 4 pastors. We go in the courtroom. They all prayed, and it was the craziest thing that I've ever seen, John. I go and I sat down, and I'm guilty of all this, and my bags are packed, ready to go to prison. I knew going to those meetings, and really was for me. And so when I went to prison, that I was going to be okay. I wasn't going to go in there and Christ really changed my heart. And when he changed my heart, he changed the way that I looked at things. He changed the stuff that I listened to. He changed the language that came out of my mouth. Like, I didn't say I'm going to stop swearing. I didn't say I was going to, stop listening to this kind of music. I didn't, all those things, those just, the closer that I got to Christ, those things just changed within me. So it was like he gave me that new heart, that I always had wanted. So I'm in court. The judge, they do a plea bargain to 6 years, and it would have been 18 years plus a habitual drug felon, which is another 8 years that they didn't add to that. So I go to court, and there's a plea bargain of 6 years, which is a really good deal.
Yeah.
And so I accept the 6 years, and then my attorney says he's going to leave it under the judge's discretion, which, totally up to the judge what happens to me. So the judge reads off my sentence and everything, and you're to serve whatever 6 times 365 days is in the DOC. And that was it. And I was basically, getting ready to, thank everyone for, coming on my behalf. And he stopped and he said, Brian, he said, I don't know why I'm doing this. And I thought it was going to be worse. I thought, he's going to smoke, he's going to deny it, and he's going to smoke me. Because all the Hartford City Police Department, bro, they showed up in the hallway to watch me go to prison. Like I'll never forget sitting there and seeing, 5, 6, 7, 8 police officers to see what happens to me. So, I saw their presence out the hallway. So I'm sitting there, and he said, I'm going to let you write your own prescription for your recovery. And I looked at my attorney, and I'm like, what just happened, and what does that mean? And he said, did you apply for community corrections? And I think I did apply, but I don't think the state even wanted that as a part of a plea, or, you know what I'm saying? That was one of those things. I applied, but they were like, nah. And I did apply, and he asked if I had anywhere to do house arrest. Well, I didn't think my mom and dad, for them to be done with me before, but they saw the change within me, in that 6-month time frame. So they were there and said, he can do house arrest at our house. And and I walked out of the courthouse to community corrections fully 100% knowing I'm going to prison. And went out in the courtyard, and there's a 50-person circle holding hands in the courthouse lawn and giving thanks to God. And I got to go to community corrections and meet Tyler Hunt, which is one of the most amazing people that I know as a community corrections officer. Helped me in my journey. One time I was sitting in his office, and he said, Brian, he said, you have the opportunity to be one of the most successful people that's ever sat in front of me, like believed in me, you know what I mean? And, just from hearing people starting to believe in me, I really started to believe in myself. And not so much believing in myself, it was like, Jesus did this in my life, and all this stuff is happening, you know what I'm saying? And none of this is by coincidence. So
hold on. You were standing in front of the judge.
Yeah.
And he reads off.
Yeah.
However many days, 6 years is worth.
A lot.
And then he just says, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah. He says that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because they didn't want him to.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, every single person in that hallway in the state was looking at him like, what the freak did you just do? Are you kidding me?
But you had to wear a bracelet for a long time.
Long time.
How long were you on that thing?
2.5 years, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
So
I thought it was longer than that.
Well, so they gave me 6 years on house arrest,
Uh-huh.
and did 2.5 years, modified off at 2.5 years, went another 2 years on probation, and then modified off of probation on doing that well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to be an addictions counselor when I got out of jail and kind of went to my mom and dad's. I was on disability, but God healed my body, so I really was convicted on taking free money because I knew I could work again.
Yeah.
And I go to college, I make the dean's list, and I get to this part in college that was ethics. John, you know anything about ethics,
Oh my
John?
gosh, they have so many classes on ethics.
Yeah, so I took ethics, and being a Christian and loving people and being friends with people, I was like, there's no way I can be a counselor and be ethical in, you know what I'm saying, in being a counselor or
You
whatever.
mean in like a sense of like loving people and
Yeah.
walking life out with them? You have so many boundaries in in the capacity of
Yeah, and not do it and be right about it. I couldn't feel good about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, the stuff, I was just like, there's no way. So I went home, and I'm like, I prayed, and, God released me from college. And how I know this, I went and I told my mom, I said, Mom, I just quit college. And she's like, oh, yeah. And went to making some supper.
Yeah.
Just went about her business. She didn't sit down and be like, are you kidding me? She knew that I was praying every night. She knew I was on my knees. She knew I was in worship and, doing the right thing. So she must have understood that, this was a God thing. Well, that same night, I get a message from Scott Blakely that I graduated high school with. He's a principal now, but he was working for a place called Joe on the Go, which is a coffee shop in Upland, amazing coffee shop. And he messages me, and I think at that time I had been on Facebook, and I'm radical, John. You know what I'm saying? And he I've been doing this for a long time consistently, and so he reaches out probably after a year, and he's like, is this real, Brian? And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, did you really change your life? And I said, I'm not out to prove to anyone whether my life has changed or my life has not changed. Like, my heart has changed. I'm not the same dude, buddy. And he was like, I want to offer you a job. Well, my heart's convicted about this disability stuff. I'm at my mom and dad's. I'm going to meetings in church, and I want to work. So he calls me, and he's like, what would you think about being a barista? And I was like, I don't even know what that is, bro. What's a barista? And he's like, serving coffee. And I was like, serving coffee? Well, one, coffee's delicious. And, two, I love to serve. So, that fit me really well. So I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, meet up with me here on this date. And I go to Upland to meet up with Scott Blakely. And I go for an interview, kind of. And I pull up, and it looks like my food truck now. Yeah. That's what I'm selling coffee out of. So I'm pulling up to my new job, and it's a little bitty trailer that I'm going to be handing coffee, out of the front of. And I'm like, okay, this is a good starting point. I go and I open the door to the trailer, and I walk in, and there stands the guy that has chased me in high-speed pursuits, been on the drug task force, all this other stuff, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, Mr. Oliver, he don't mind me sharing this, but he and I'm thinking, I guarantee
so he was a police officer.
He was a police officer. I did not like him. He did not like me. We let each other know that one another didn't like each other through our, he had a job to do, and I was a criminal, so you know how that works.
Yeah.
Probably said a lot of foul things to that guy. He probably said a lot of foul things back to me. So, I'm in a trailer with Scott Blakely and this guy, and I didn't know what his role was, why he was in there. And he's like, hold on. And he said, I'm not a police officer anymore, Brian. I'm working for Family Services is who was taking on the role of Joe on the go. And he was like, I've been watching you. And he said, basically he knows that I've changed. And basically he said that he was sorry. And I got to say that I was sorry, for what I did. And he said, he believed people can change and they're, and we could work together and do some cool stuff. So I'm sitting there standing in front. If there was one person that I'd say I probably would have disliked the most, God set me in front of at my first job to make the true amends of, I don't have to hold on to who I was. Yeah. Because who I was is who I was in addiction. Who I am today is, I'm a child of God with a new life. So I got to start a new life, at a coffee shop. I worked there in Upland for about a month. Actually, Scott ended up getting a different job, back to being a principal. I think Glenn or Mr. Oliver took Scott's job, which made me, it moved me up the ladder. Yeah. And I ended up being in Upland, right beside Ivanhoe's. So a lot of people, Ivanhoe's. You gotta frequent.
Strawberry shortcake.
Oh man, it was amazing. But at Ivanhoe's, I started really sharing my testimony about what Jesus did in my life, and I got an ankle bracelet on. So, I'm the general manager of this business, and people would come in and they would see, an ankle bracelet wrapped around my ankle, and you would get the eyebrows, like, what did you do? And it really gave...
I did a lot.
Yeah.
Trust me, I did a lot.
It gave me a chance to just go in, and then Taylor students started coming in, and I was witnessing to Taylor students happen to... A Taylor student that was their... He wrote their paper or whatever, and he was like, can I take your testimony down? And I'm like, yeah. So he came and did an interview. This was why I was on house arrest, all this stuff. And he came back a couple weeks later, and he's like, Brian, there was 14,000 people that like viewed your stuff. And I was like, that's cool. And he's like, no, the most it's ever is like 2,000 on anything.
Okay, so you're the general manager at Joe on the Go. I almost said Go on the Joe. Joe on the Go. And so what happens next? Like, how do you end up getting into the like actual work of recovery coaching, peer support, and stuff like that? Like, how did we get to there?
So the neat part about this is you've played a role in my journey in showing up and saying yes, and now you showed up in my journey and you said no. So, which was ended up being good for me, and it really allowed me to be able to work with you. So there's an event hosted by Andy Zay, which was the state representative, or is.
Still is, yeah.
Yeah, still is a state representative, and they had an event at the Wabash Honeywell Center, which is a beautiful venue.
Yeah.
And I get to share my testimony because they had all the slots filled, and you were going to be like the final speaker of the evening. So, John Humphreys is basically the final speaker, and I don't know what you had going on at the time, but we had spoken, and I had got to show up in your spot.
Yeah.
And I man, it was awesome, John. And there was a lot of people there, and at the end, God moved right there at the end, and it was pretty awesome. And from sharing my testimony, Grant Blackford Mental Health had reached out to me. I don't know. I think it was Tia or Shane Beal had reached out to me and about putting my application in for the core program that they were wanting to do. So I put my name in. I didn't really know if I wanted to put my name in because I had a great job. I had a good.
We also we didn't know what it was. There wasn't a lot of jobs like that, so you didn't know what you were actually putting in for.
Exactly, but I knew that I loved to help people.
Yeah.
And my thing is people that's been through the things that I've been through, I really wanted to be involved. So I put in my application, and 30 days had went by, and nothing. So I didn't think that I was, even going to be selected. Well, they ended up calling me and giving me an interview, and basically hired me, right on the spot.
Yeah.
And from there, I think I was working with Tia, Greg Painter, and I think you were hired after. Were you hired before me or after me?
No. I think it got brought up to me. I was like, yeah, I'm not interested. I didn't know anything about it. And then when you started to tell, like when you got hired and you were like, hey, dude, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
You started telling me about it. I went in, and a spot opened up. Somebody, I don't know if there was a spot open anyway or something opened up, but I came in and did an interview. So you got the job from speaking at the event that I couldn't make it to, and then turned around and I got the job. Andy Zay, he's actually a state senator, if I'm not mistaken, not a representative. I think
he was a representative then.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's really supportive of a lot of the recovery stuff we've done. I don't know how many things I don't know how many things he's shown up to, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Even up to right now.
He supports us.
But yeah, so then I came in and got the job, and that kind of circles us back to walking up to the hospital.
Yeah.
Like,
how did we get here?
Yeah, just walking up to the hospital. And so we've spent 7 years. There was a gap there a little bit, but I was still working with the core program, even when I wasn't working with the core program. But yeah, it's crazy how that all circled back around.
Yeah, and God was
Uh,
in all of it.
and now we're we're really close friends
Yeah.
too. On the other when we work together, we don't see each other as much as when we don't work together, because like you're always doing transports and I'm out doing the community
Yeah.
stuff. But so just real quick. So tell me about your personal life. What God's done in there.
So the beautiful thing is I got married on house arrest.
He was on house arrest. He got married at a
Yeah.
service, a Hope House service.
So I met my wife at the Hope House.
Which is there's a couple different Hope Houses. This was just the Hope House service. It's still over there today. Daniel Baker does it now, right? But it used to, there for a while, that thing was, it was really, a lot of people were showing up. It was like a perfect storm.
Yeah, all the counties would meet up in Harvard City.
Yeah. And so you got married on house arrest at the Sunday nights. It's still on Sunday nights too, over in Hartford City.
That was awesome.
You got married at the service to Jamie.
Yeah, to Jamie. So I met her sharing her testimony, but at your first night of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So the first night of freedom is where I kind of knew that I was in love with Jamie.
Yeah.
So it's like how that stuff happens. So, they want to talk about relationships or whatever. It's like, look, I got married on house arrest. You want me to tell people about relationships, right?
Right.
Yeah, don't do this or do this. But
but it was challenging, wasn't it? Like I think having two people.
I was on house arrest, married.
Two people in recovery trying to work.
Never married. She was never married. I was never married. We're two totally different people, really. But our love for Christ was the main thing. Yeah. And she struggled early in our marriage, and she went through a relapse at the beginning of the marriage. So I'm leading a ministry, and here my wife, she relapses and kind of falls out. She had like almost 6.5 years sober, leader of women, and fell. She was disconnected from her support and everything, and struggling. Well, she ended up going to treatment, and while she was at treatment, she had an encounter with the Holy Spirit in treatment, and there were people telling me to divorce my wife and all this stuff, and which is crazy to me, because you take those vows in sickness and in health till death do you part. Like, we were saved, and we take our vows, you know what I mean, seriously. So to have people say this, that, or the other, it's like, I'm glad that I hit my face and ran to God, and we stuck it out, and I was 46 years old, and I'm 11 years older than she is, and she was working at Weaver Popcorn at the time, which was a really great job for her, and she called me to go over there and meet her on one of her breaks, and she had a McDonald's bag, and inside of there is a chicken McNuggets box. Well, I don't eat McDonald's, like, rarely. Like, it's just me, I'm not in no McDonald's commercials, bro. And I look in there, and I'm like, I don't want any chicken McNuggets. And she's like, no, open it. And then I just thought, okay. And then I saw the pregnancy test, and I was like, what? Dude, I'm trying to add 46 plus 18 because, that's when a kid graduates, and, an 8 and a 6 to me, I'm struggling in my brain. So she's like, aren't you happy? And I'm like, absolutely, So the biggest blessing came through both. She 3 of her children, she didn't get to raise fully 3 kids. So, and I wasn't the best father, to my son, growing up. So God give us something together that, we work on our marriage, and gave us a son, Noah, who is now 4 years old.
He's running around right now, and
Right
my
now.
oldest daughter
Yeah.
Remy's chasing him
And
out in the gym there.
and I tell you, he's a lot, John, and that's okay, because I was a lot,
Yeah.
and Jamie was a lot. So, but
Well,
that's
and the thing with Jamie is, like, our first interview we did, episode 1 was with Jackie, and she talks about how important Jamie was in her walk. So Jamie now
oh yeah,
she's working in the recovery field, and she's
she's
probably
a
got a lot of
supervisor of
yeah,
the
she's got a
IREX,
lot of time again, I'm sure. So that she kind of, after, especially after Noah, she got into the field and started
grinding.
started really doing some good
Yeah,
work.
yeah. So I worked 2 jobs, while she was pregnant, and had Noah. So I was the life change director at the Grant County Rescue Mission,
Yeah.
while I was working on the core program. So I mean, I'm trying to provide and be there, and still doing ministry. That was a trying time.
So after us working together for all of these years, you've kind of recently made the decision to go. Grant County's where we work, but you've kind of made the decision to leave the core program,
Yeah.
the Grant County job. So what is next for you? We mentioned you have the food truck and the power washing, but is that what you're going to do, or do you know yet, or where do you feel led next?
Yeah, so it was a lot, really, to leave Grant County. All the relationships and all the things. But with Jamie working in Delaware County, Noah's now going to school, and he's got to be there at 8 o'clock, and someone's got to pick him up at 2:30. So my mom and dad are getting old, and I really don't have someone that could be consistent with doing that. So with me running 2 businesses, it made sense that I stayed home. So the challenge is winter is coming. So when winter comes, those 2 businesses go away, John.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming, but the good thing is I have support, and my goal is to get closer to the Lord,
Yeah.
and to hear His voice of what He wants me to do, and where He wants me to go, because I did ministry for a long time, and I came to a point to where I loved ministry more than I loved my wife, more than I loved about anything, and ministry consumed all of my time. So really stepping away from ministry was a chance for me to be a husband and a father, and me stepping away from Grant County and peer support is going to give me an opportunity to be a better entrepreneur. So, I'm going to focus on business, investing in people, and, my ministry is just going to come in loving people. I don't know if I'll ever do ministry again, like I did before. I haven't been out sharing my testimony, like I used to.
Yeah.
There's been seasons where, we go and speak a lot, and then, the seasons where we haven't. So, my ministry is at home, and I need to be a better husband. I need to be a better father. I need to identify those areas inside of my household, and I really need to work on the inside of my home, because everybody's life on the outside can look great and everything, and then someone goes home, and then your home life isn't the greatest, and you could struggle at home. So I really just want to focus on my home life and being there.
Yeah. I think the one thing that is challenging about the job we do is a lot of times we don't take breaks, we don't take vacations, and you start to get, I don't know if it's burned out, but you actually have physical stuff,
Yeah.
like you start to, your blood pressure can get jacked up because you're just going. and not to mention not sleeping, like, all of that stuff. So like learning how to rest, but I also think it's in that rest, catching the things internally that still need worked on, because I think that we can sometimes think that we've healed all the way, all of these things, and then like if you just take that time with God, but even just sitting on the porch just with you, sometimes it's like there's so much work that we all still need to do within ourselves. And when you get to grinding, sometimes, like, I don't think it's sometimes, a lot of us, you go so hard, you start to neglect the things that are most important. And if you don't take that downtime to, you'll never, we're blessed enough to have recognized it. But some people, you read in God's generals and stuff like that, they came to the end of their life and their families were neglected, and some of them hated God and, did the opposite because, they were neglected for ministry, or they were like, the chasing, the chasing and the pulpits and all these things were so important, but the family fell way to the wayside,
And that's why we have accountability in our lives.
We should have accountability.
And people to call us on our bull crap.
Yeah.
When we're not doing good, asking us what's wrong or helping us process stuff.
Yeah, so, I think groups are important, and whatever that looks like to the person.
I think they're vital.
Cell groups are like, and I don't know what it's like for women, but for men, it's very important to have the processing. And I'm starting to learn, like with me, the value of the, AA, NA groups, processing with people, Bible studies, cell groups. That stuff's so important to have this group of people that you kind of keep coming back to. So Blevins, we're probably going to have you on again because we talked about some other projects. So this won't be the last time you're on here. We got some cool things that we're wanting to work on. One more time, tell us about your Facebook pages so people can find ways to reach you if they want to get the food truck or the power wash.
So I have a Chubby Burgers page, and basically my soft wash I just put on my social media. So I have over 5,000 friends on my Facebook page. Yeah. So if you try to be my friend on Facebook, they don't allow anyone. But if you want to follow me or whatever that looks like, you can just go to Brian Blevins there on Facebook. I'm not a big TikTok or Instagram. I might be on there, but I just...
The wash is, I saw it. Somebody's on there.
Yeah, Coy.
Yeah, somebody's on there. Yeah, somebody's on there pressure washing because I saw it.
Yeah, it's not me.
So follow Brian on that stuff. Go give him a like and a follow. That really helps, and a way to support and reach out to him. So many cool things that Brian's done. It's always it's an honor to have him on. It's an honor to call him a friend and a brother, because if you knew, we couldn't tap into a lot of the things that he's done for this community. Grant County was blessed to have him here, and we still have him here. He still comes to church here and everything. So once again, this was Escaping the Chains podcast. We had Brian Blevins on today. We are brought to you by Delivered Media, Chubby Burger. What is the power wash again?
B&B Soft Wash.
Why can I not
LLC.
get that?
That's all
B&B
right.
Soft Wash LLC. That would be our sponsors today. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Go back. If you haven't listened to some of the other podcasts, we've got a lot of really good ones on there. And if you get a chance and you listen to this whole thing and you liked it, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, and give us a review on the last two if you wouldn't mind. So thank you so much for tuning in. This has been John Humphreys and Escaping the Chains podcast.